Hello and welcome to Homicide Hobbies. I'm Andy,
And I'm Claire.
and we're here to talk about some of the disturbing things that go on in the world, past and present. We feel like not knowing doesn't mean the crazy doesn't exist.
So we're going to scar you with the knowing.
Enjoy.
Let's see. Okay, so this is part 2 of our Halloween special. If you haven't
Happy
listened,
Halloween.
yes, happy Halloween. May you be safe. Check your treats.
Keep tabs on your children. Don't sit alone in a dark vehicle.
Or a light one. Colors no matter.
Wow. Don't walk alone at night.
Why are you addressing children again?
I'm not.
You said children don't sit in a dark vehicle.
No, I didn't. I said, and don't. So It's recorded. I did not say children.
Fine. Well, children, you shouldn't be listening to this. Turn it off. But anywho, so this is part 2. Listen to part 1 so that way you understand the situation.
Some background information on Pinky and the Brain.
Yeah. So just to reiterate, we're going to be talking about some rape and torture and murder. So Norris and Bittaker were just driving around in their murder van, or murder Mac there, one afternoon when they spot their first victim, Cindy Schaefer. Now, they pull alongside of her and ask her if she wants a ride, to which she says no. She's walking home from church to her grandmother's house, which isn't far. Now,
It's never far.
It never is. And I'm always sadder for the victims who they're only like a few feet away from safety.
Yeah.
But I also feel like that might also be why they're not on their game, because they feel comfortable where they are. They've walked that street or road hundreds of times, so they don't think that they could be abducted.
Well, have you ever heard that it's the same thing with car accidents?
Yeah.
That you tend to get into, you're more likely to get in a car accident. I think it's like 2 miles from your house. And it's mainly because people put their guard down. And
I also feel like because you're driving that path more often, so the odds are higher because you're driving that route more often.
True. But I honestly think that because you think you know your road and you know your area, that your guard is down. And that's when people are
complacent.
Yeah. So same idea, I guess, with walking. It's not much different.
Yeah. So Norris and Bittaker have a brief conversation on whether or not they should grab her. She's 16 years old, and she's only 2 blocks from her grandmother's house.
Ugh.
They make a U-turn and then kind of pull up next to the curb where Norris pretends like he's fiddling around with something. Bittaker said his vote for why they should grab her is because she's pretty, blonde, and alone. And this is Bittaker talking. If she would have been slightly aware of her surroundings, it wouldn't have happened. Speaking about her abduction.
Again, way to take responsibility for his own screwed up thoughts.
Yes. So, again, they're pulled over because they do a U-turn since she was walking the opposite direction of which way they were driving. And they're like waiting for her to walk by. Bittaker's like farting around with shit in the van, pretending they're doing something. And then Bittaker, this is him again, coming from an interview. She didn't expect anything. She just walked right on by us. I ran behind her, grabbed her. I put my hand over her mouth. Now, they chunk her in the van. Norris tapes her up. She's on her stomach, like her hands and her feet and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And Bittaker asks her how old she is, to which she tells him she's 15. He asks where she lives. She tells him she lives in Redondo Beach with her grandmother because her mom's in Mexico City. She's supposed to drive up, place it in just above where she's at now.
Mm-hmm.
And Cindy asks if they're going to kill her, to which they laugh at her And then she asks if they're going to kill her, can she at least pray first? And Bittaker tells her that God isn't there, so it wouldn't matter.
It's harsh.
So she's taped up in the back. They drive out to the Saint Gabriel Mountains, and she's got no idea what's about to happen to her. But I don't even know if these two know what they're about to do. Now, with Bittaker driving, Norris is instructed to get the girl ready. So Norris climbs back there, undresses her, and tells her if she cooperates, they won't hurt her.
They're undressing her. They're going to hurt her in some way, shape, or form. So,
yeah. So Bittaker backs the van up to a yellow firebox that was facing out on Fire Road in case they had to make a rapid exit. I looked all over what the hell a firebox was. I'm still not 100% sure what a firebox is, but I would assume all the wildfires that happen in California has something to do with that. Either a sensor of some sort, or I have no earthly idea what a firebox is. Anybody who knows, feel free to let me know, because I Googled plenty in California. What the hell's a firebox? I even thought maybe Fire Road was like, you know how if you try to control a fire, you make a break so it can't continue into the woods?
Yeah.
To try to contain it. I even thought maybe Fire Road was like, it's not the name of the road. No, the name of the road is Fire Road.
Interesting.
So I have no idea, but he backs up to this box. That way, if they have to skedaddle, he doesn't have to back out. He can just beat feet. Now, they have a lengthy conversation as to who gets the first one to rape Cindy. And Bittaker suggests that Norris go ahead because he was the one who took all the risk and grabbing her and taping her up and in the back. So he gets first dibs. So Norris begins the rape of Cindy. The rest of the evening, they take turns raping her several times. Now, at some point...
Several times?
Yes, several times.
Jeez.
At some point, Cindy figures out that she's in serious trouble, so she again asks if they're going to kill her and if she could please be allowed to pray. Norris says, oh, no. We're going to give you some marijuana and let you go and everything will be cool. He even tries to tell her he's sorry for what he's done, or what they both have done. And he tells her, you know what? I'm going to give you money for this and my name and number because I like you. And that way, if you need anything in the future, you can just reach out. Now, naturally, Norris and Bittaker get out of the van, and Norris and Bittaker have a 90-minute long conversation on what to proceed with. Because ultimately, Bittaker thinks they should kill her, and Norris thinks that they can release her, and she'll call them up next time she feels like being raped several times in an evening. Which is why I was saying, I don't know what Norris's IQ is, but...
It's low. It's very, very low.
Very low and very easy to be manipulated.
He wasn't even manipulated. He's just freaking stupid.
Well, when I read that he wrote down his name, address, and phone number for her to reach out to him in the future...
actually,
he full idiot?
He was thinking more on the side of maybe by giving her that information, he was thinking it would calm her down, even though he knows they're not going to release her, but it would at least make her think, you know?
Well, I've never read ever or heard anywhere of a rapist giving their victim their information for if they need anything in the future. But Bittaker being the brains of the... Well, Bittaker being the brains of this operation is just like, yeah, so you might as well go down and turn yourself in, idiot.
I mean, not to agree with the mastermind here, but yes, I would have to agree.
Yeah, so he's just like, so now she can really identify us. You gave her your name and address. Even if he takes the paper back, he already told her. So he's like, so we can't spare her. We've got to kill her. So he convinces Norris of this, of that's what they've got to do. And he's like, and you know what? you have to do it. So they don't let her pray, and Norris goes back there and tries to strangle her with a wire coat hanger, but he
Ugh.
can't get it tight enough, and Cindy's thrashing around. She tries to bite him. So she's crying and gasping for breath, and it has an effect on him. He stops what he's doing, gets out of the van, and starts vomiting to where he vomits so hard his false teeth come out, and he's got to fish him out of his vomit.
Oh, wait a minute. Oh, hold up. How old is he?
He's not that old.
What?
He's in his 30s. I don't know what happened to his teeth, Andrew, because other than this point in time, his teeth are not brought up ever again. And I don't know why he has false teeth, but he vomits so hard his false teeth fly out of his mouth.
I'm picturing full dentures right this second, and it makes me want to laugh. But
it's funny that you picture that, because I was picturing just like one rogue front tooth that one flew out.
No, I pictured like the cartoon version of like the jaws shattering, like.
I don't know. The fact that he had to fish him out of his vomit, I hope he washed them, not just immediately put them back in there. But
ew.
But that's where I say he's definitely one who has the conscience between the two of them, because he liked Cindy in his warped way. He liked her, and he couldn't kill her. So I mean, he just her being upset and thrashing around upset him to the point of vomiting. So naturally, while he's vomiting and searching for his teeth, Bittaker grabs the vice grips and takes hold of the coat hanger, wraps it tight around her neck, and keeps tightening until she's dead. Now, Bittaker drives the van to the spot they had previously pointed, or that Norris had previously pointed to, opens the side door, heave-hose her body right off of the side of the cannon. Her body is never recovered.
Well, holy shit. Like, ever?
Ever. Never, never, never. Now, Bittaker recalls seeing articles about her disappearance and that no one had any idea of what happened to her. So they had nothing to go on, other than them claiming her murder. Her family never has any closure with that.
Gosh.
Which brings us to Andrea Hall.
What?
Is their second victim.
Your other one, the daughter's name was Andrea.
I can't help what they name their children.
Okay.
But Andrea Hall is the second victim. But way to make it about yourself, Andrea.
No, not about me. Just the great name.
Now, this Andrea is 18 years old and from Ohio. Now, she was spotted by Norris and Bittaker 2 weeks after they killed Cindy. And she's not very far from her boyfriend's house, but she still decides to hitchhike herself around. But in that day and age, everybody kind of hitchhiked. So it wasn't like everybody's getting murdered when they're hitchhiking. But her family in Ohio would also claim that they didn't realize that's how she was getting around.
Well, what did they think she was doing?
I don't know. I think it was one of those, they just figured she was either walking everywhere or maybe her boyfriend was taking her places. She's taking the bus. Whatever the scenario is, they didn't realize she was hitchhiking with strangers. But before Norris and Bittaker can pull up and offer her a ride, Andrea gets in a car with another guy. So rather than call it quits, Norris and Bittaker decide to follow this car until she gets out. So I didn't know when people hitchhiked that they would go as far as somebody would take them and then hitchhike again until they got wherever they were going. I don't think about hitchhiking. So it makes sense that you wouldn't be able to stick your thumb out and find somebody who's going the exact same place that you are. So
they could just get you closer to where you were headed.
Yeah, so that was partially why they decided to follow the car, because they figure the odds are it's going to be exactly that. She's going to have to get out and hitchhike again. That is exactly what happens. They follow her, she gets out, then starts hitchhiking again, so they pull up and pick her up. Now, during this process, they decide since they haven't had real good luck with pulling up and people wanting to get into a car with two men, they decide it's less threatening if Bittaker's by himself, So he tells Norris to hide in the back under the bed. Which, by the way, to me, I was thinking, it's just a mattress on the floor of a van. So he's just hiding under the comforter.
Well, at least he's under the comforter. I thought he was hiding under the mattress because I was like,
well, I don't know.
You're a full-blown idiot at this point.
Like his legs poking out of the blankets, like an ostrich with his head in a hole. That's what I was picturing. Because Norris, again, he's not smart. But so it works. Andrea hops in the passenger seat of the van. Bittaker asks her if she wants a drink, because there's a cooler in the back if she wants to grab something. To which she's like, cool, I'll totally do that. So she goes to hop in the back, and at that moment, Norris springs up from under the bed and starts accosting Andrea. Now, she starts fighting and making a bunch of noise. There's all sorts of clunking going on. So Bittaker turns up the radio because he's afraid that they'll be heard, since they're not in dead stop traffic, but there's people around, so he doesn't want them to hear. Now, she starts to get the upper hand on Norris, so Bittaker slams on the brakes, which allows Norris to gain the upper hand again. And then he gets her all tied up, and they drive out to the mountains.
How old is she?
18. Okay. Which I think is funny that Norris starts struggling. Like, he struggles. I don't want to say the poor guy because I don't feel bad for either one of them.
Is it possible that because the 18-year-old almost got the upper hand, that's why they chose to go for younger girls after that? Because and it just kept going down.
Handed to him.
Yeah, so they're like, okay, so the older ones can fight back a little bit better. Let's go for a little bit younger next time.
Yeah. So when they get up to the mountains, they park. Norris gets out and stands guard. Since he got the first go on their first victim, naturally Andrea Bittaker gets to go first. And they do this thing where they go back and forth, raping Andrea and one standing guard. Now, on one of these turns, when Norris is outside, he swears he sees headlights coming. Now, keep in mind, they're in the middle of nowhere on a mountain. So Bittaker takes Andrea out of the van and into some shrubs and tells Norris to take the van and go investigate. Now, Norris doesn't find anything. He doesn't find a car. He just, whatever the light he thought he saw, he did not see. I think
unless there was somebody hiking and they had a flashlight.
Who hikes at night?
People. I don't know. Mountain men. I don't know.
The Night Stalker?
Maybe.
Somebody else throwing a body off of a...
It's the 70s. It's entirely possible.
It's probably so. So Norris returns. They load Andrea back up and decide they need to move to a different location because even though they didn't find anybody, they're paranoid as fuck.
Oh, so yeah.
Bittaker takes Andrea back out of the van and up a small hill, and he takes his walkie-talkie with him so that way he can communicate with Norris. He's gone.
Okay, so wait. Have you ever used a walkie-talkie and you can pick up other walkie-talkies on the same channel in the vicinity?
I remember the house phone growing up that you could hear whoever was on the phone.
Yeah.
But keep in mind, they're in the middle of nowhere. There are no other walkie-talkies. There are no cell phones because the time frame we're talking anyhow. But there's no one out there keeping in communication with their walkie-talkies. So Bittaker is gone for 2 hours.
With Andrea or without Andrea?
With her. Okay. Now, when he returns, he's got 8 photographs that he had taken where Andrea is nude and in various poses. They take pictures with Polaroids so that they can make smutty pictures that they don't have to have someone else develop. Now, Norris is just like, I've been sitting here in this van for 2 hours. This isn't fun. I have to work in the morning. And when we were out with Cindy, I was exhausted the next day at work. I can't keep doing this. But Bittaker's like, well, I'm not done. So drop me off. You go do whatever you've got to do. And I'll let you know when I'm ready for you to pick me up. So for whatever reason, they decide they need to drive to a new location for this. So Bittaker gets Andrea back out of the van, finds another little patch of hill nearby, and Norris drives into town to the store, still communicating by walkie-talkies, which, by the way, it's like, okay, well, now you're in town. So these are some serious walkie-talkies, but you would think now people could potentially hear whatever you say on them.
Well, and if like unless it's got like some type of magical headset attached to it,
Yeah.
when dipshit number one radios to dipshit number two, anybody around dipshit number two is going to hear what dipshit number one's saying. And God forbid Andrea be screaming in the background at that point because other people are going to hear it.
At first, when they said they were communicating by walkie-talkie, I thought it was like Norris is alone in the van beating it to the noise.
Ew.
Just
ew.
Yeah, that's not where this goes. But that's where I was like, I don't get why they can rape some of them in the van, and then Andrea has to be dragged around this mountain in multiple locations and raped.
Because they're experimenting. They got away with the first one. Now they're just seeing what they can get away with her.
Yeah. So Bittaker lets Norris know that he's done with his business and he can come get him. Now, when Norris returns, Bittaker's by himself. There's no Andrea, and he's got 2 more pictures to show that he's taken. One picture, he tells Norris that he told Andrea he's going to kill her, and then snapped a picture of her reaction, to which the look on her face is just pure horror. Now, Bittaker also told her, give me some reasons why I shouldn't kill you, but I guess people don't typically think they're going to be asked that, and Andrea couldn't come up with very many. So she's going to be the first person he attempts to kill with an ice pick to the ear. Now, he'll say he got the idea from a movie he saw in prison where somebody dies by getting stabbed in the side of the head with an ice pick. But unfortunately for Andrea, it does not kill her.
Oh, gosh.
So he pulls out the ice pick, rolls her on her other side, and stabs her through the other ear, then steps on it until the handle breaks.
Oh.
I'm sad to say she's not even dead.
Oh my God. Is she at least like just
No
comatose? Like,
so apparently the ice pick to the first ear, she screamed, which apparently it will like shatter your eardrum, an immense amount of pain, but it's not a kill wound at all. So then when he does it to the second ear, he basically just deafens her and puts her in a fuck ton of pain. So since that doesn't work, mind you, the ice pick is now broken in her other ear, and he strangles her. Then he throws her body off of the cliff. Again, her body is never found.
The fuck is this cliff?
And when Andrea goes missing, the police also have no leads. Her family are beside themselves in Ohio, and they will never give up hope of recovering her body. Although it's still never recovered. Part of me thinks,
how far down is the cliff?
So part of me thinks that because they're in the boonies so deep that it's really hard to figure out which ravine they chunked her in. And then you've got to factor in if it rains, the bones could be washed down. You've got animals that are going to be picking at the bones. So it's just like nothing's found ever.
That's so sad.
It is.
I'm not going to lie. You made me a little bit sick to my stomach when you said that
pick.
Yeah, and then stomped on it until it snapped off and she was still alive. Like, fuck, man. Ugh.
Well, that's why it's just like the things these two do, which again, I know I say Norris is an idiot, but Bittaker is definitely the crueler of the 2, but Bittaker is by no means innocent. So Norris is by no means innocent.
Yeah. So this is where, since they like to go with the whole religion thing, and I'm not saying these 2 in general, I'm saying all of these criminals that claim religion in some way, shape, or form. This is where I say I totally go eye for an eye, and they deserve, at least Bittaker deserves a ice pick to the eardrum and then to the other eardrum.
Well, when he pulled it out and did it to the other side, I was like, oh, like, what the fuck?
Also, somebody probably should have told him the movies are not real.
Yeah.
Let's start with that there, buddy.
So this brings us to victims 3 and 4. They're Leah Lamp and Jackie Gillum. Now, they're two friends that decide to go to the beach together. Now, this isn't a first time. They're used to walking to the beach. But this time, they sit on a park bench and they put their thumbs out to hitchhike. Bittaker spots them and drives over. Now, he says that the beach was just a short walk, so he wasn't sure why the girls decided to hitchhike. I don't know if they had ever done that before, but their mom, or one of the girls' moms, she thought they were just going to walk to the beach like they normally do. So I don't know what inspired this one.
How old are they?
13 and 15.
Ugh, babies.
Norris gets out of the van, opens the sliding door on the side, and they both hop in. So Norris shuts the door, Bittaker pulls away from the curb, and they start heading towards the beach on Pier Avenue. Norris asks the girls if they want anything to drink. He gets out of the passenger seat to walk to the rear of the van where the cooler is, but instead picks up a homemade sap, which is a plastic bag filled with lead weights. I didn't know what a homemade sap was prior to this. Never heard of one prior to this either, with the whole plastic bag with lead weights in it. But he strikes Leah in the right side of her head. He swings so hard that he knocks her out and assumes she's going to be down for the count for a little bit. Then he turns and grabs Jackie. Now, Bittaker does his normal thing where he cranks up the radio just in case and steps on the gas. Now, Jackie, since he just whacked her friend there, Jackie tries to make a dash for the side door as she gets the upper hand on Norris. Bittaker does it again where he slams on the brakes and runs around the front of the van. By that time, Jackie has the side of the door open and was getting ready to jump out. Bittaker punches her right in the face and she falls back inside the van screaming. Now, this whole scene happens right in front of some tennis courts where people are playing tennis. They all stop and are watching this.
What the heck?
Bittaker turns and tells them, no worries, she's just having a bad trip on acid. Those people don't report anything and go back to what they're doing.
Are you serious? That's disgusting.
Yep.
Let alone the fact that these girls are obviously a lot younger than these two men.
Yep.
No. And you've got other women or other girls that have gone missing in this area. No. What the hell is wrong with people?
Don't know. But Jackie pleads for them not to hurt her again, that she doesn't want to be hit.
If this case was in Australia, there would have been some people helping.
Somebody would have gotten a nice pick to the temple and it would have been Bittaker.
Yeah, because this should have been in Australia because they actually help their own.
Yep. So Norris tapes up Jackie, gags her, and then tapes up and gags Leah, even though she's still conked out.
Poor Leah.
And
definite concussion.
Yes. So it's a hot summer day, and even though the van AC is on, it might as well not have been for how hot it was in the van. So they drive up to the mountains and hunt for a spot to park. So they drive around for several hours looking for that shade tree that they eventually come across. Again, Bittaker backs the van up close to the tree. That way he can make his getaway if he needs to. And then that way they're also out of the sun. Now, Bittaker would rape Jackie for the next 2.5 hours while Norris photographed it.
2.5 hours? Is he taking Viagra?
I have no idea what goes on for that time period. That's just such a long time.
Is he using objects? Like, I don't understand.
I have no idea, but there are pictures.
Okay, I don't want to know that.
Now, Jackie has a black eye and a swollen side of her face in some of those pictures where Bittaker had punched her. And he had also slapped her hard enough to leave an impression on her face. Now, he tells her that was him being kind of giving her the idea of what would happen if she didn't tell him the truth, which I thought was weird. And I guess she had told him she was 13. So then this leads her to do the whole, I lied. I'm not 13, I'm 15. which Bittaker said, well, I can see that you're in pain when I'm doing this, and, feel free to express your agony. And she said, well, you told me to act like I was enjoying it. To which Bittaker says, oh, no, that's okay. You go ahead and scream your head off. Bittaker asked Norris to get the tape recorder because he wanted to tape the raping of a virgin.
Oh my God, that's disgusting.
Which, by the way, the tape recorder, it's audio only. It's not a video tape recorder. Bittaker would later bury that tape in a cemetery, and it will never be recovered. While Jackie is being raped and tortured, unfortunately for Leah, she's awake and has to watch this happen to her friend. Now, Leah is just sitting there in tears, shaking, and every time they look over at her, she's just, in fear. She's got a pleading look on her face, and it turns off both Norris and Bittaker, and they have no sexual interest in Leah. Luckily for her, they do not rape her because they find her not sexually appealing.
Huh. That's the 13-year-old?
Yeah. She cried too much, apparently.
Interesting.
So they decide that they're pretty exhausted either from the heat or all the raping, and decide to spend the night there and take turns sleeping and standing guard, switching out those duties. They also discussed how much pain poor Jackie's been going through. They want to give her time to rest before they rape her again.
Oh, isn't that kind of them?
This also gives them time to sleep too. By the way, when they're doing their sleeping, they're snuggling with Jackie.
Ew.
So I'm going to guess Jackie didn't get a whole lot of sleep.
No.
Now, that morning, Bittaker and Norris drive up the Upper Monroe Truck Trail. They spend most of the day driving aimlessly up and down Glendora Mountain Road, at one point even stopping at the convenience store in Glendora. And then that afternoon, Bittaker takes Leah out and photographs her, then ties her to a tree in the mountains, and they drive off. Actually, wow. They return to the spot the day before and rape Jackie and photograph her for another couple hours.
Poor Jackie.
They then drive back to where they strapped Leah to a tree and grab her and throw her back in the van, to which that's gotta suck, because if anybody would have been on that road, she would have been saved.
That's so sad.
But they throw her back in the van and tell the girls that they'll be taking them home soon, not to worry. Norris would tell Bittaker that since Jackie was so cooperative after she was hit, they should really just let her go. Now, Bittaker's just like, no, we're going to kill her. Norris is like, is there any way we can do it quickly, though? She's been super helpful. Bittaker is like, so she can only die once, so no, I don't see a point in doing it quickly.
Ew.
Right. So Bittaker parks the van. Norris, knowing what's going to happen next, gets out of the van and starts walking down the road. Bittaker gets out a pair of vice grips and his new ice pick and starts the torture on Jackie. He pinches Jackie's legs, her breasts, tears off part of her nipple.
Oh my God.
He then thrusts the ice pick through her breasts and twists it, making her scream. Since he likes his ice pick, he then takes it out of her breast and pushes the ice pick into Jackie's ear, which naturally makes her scream out even more. Now, at this point, Norris is able to hear Jackie screaming, and he's about 50 feet from the van. He goes back to the van and sees Bittaker has Jackie now outside of the van and was strangling her. After Jackie had died, Bittaker opened the door of the van and gets Leah out, who had been passed out due to them giving her sleeping pills. So he pulls Leah. Bittaker takes a sledgehammer and hits her on the back of the head. She falls down. He picks her back up and starts strangling her. Norris continues to hit her with the sledgehammer. Now, Bittaker and Norris, once poor Leah's dead, they take her to the edge of the cliff and throw her off. Then they return to Jackie's body, drag her over, and throw her off the cliff. Norris and Bittaker get back in the van, and return to their houses. The next day, they both return to work after the Labor Day holiday, just like normal.
Ugh.
Now, side note, when the bodies of Jackie and Leah are eventually located, the ice pick is still lodged in Jackie's skull, and Leah's skull, it shows each one of the hammer blows. Now,
I am without words.
there's really not. So on September 27th, 1979, Bittaker and Norris attempt to abduct an unidentified woman, but she dodged behind the van and escaped.
She has no idea how
No,
lucky she is.
she does not. 3 days later, they see a lady, it's Jan Mallon, parked in her car in an apartment garage, and she gets out and returns to the garage entrance to close the garage door. Bittaker approaches her, sprays her with mace, and attempts to drag her into the van. Jan screams and, like, creating a big scene, struggling and everything. The neighbors start to come out of their houses nearby. This scares Norris. He was in the van, and he drives off, leaving Bittaker to flee on foot. Which I feel like now I know why Bittaker's the wheelman in all of this, because the one time Norris is driving, he's just like, peace.
Oh, God.
Later that same day, they go back to the hunt because since they didn't get their gal, they come across Robin Robeck, drag her into the van, and they both rape her before letting her go. Now, Robin reports the rape and abduction to police, but is unable to identify her assailants. She described.
Did they? I don't understand.
Hold your horses.
Did they wear masks?
I think because she didn't know them. That's like she'd never seen them before. She describes the van.
Or how old was she?
I don't know.
Oh.
But she describes the van, which I feel like doesn't help because when I describe the van, I'm sure you've seen plenty of them. It's a van. The sliding door, there's a bajillion of them. So I feel like it's also the serial killer, abductor, rapist van of choice. So no offense to the people who have it as a legitimate work vehicle, but unfortunately, a lot of people use them, both for criminal and non-criminal activities. So describing the van isn't super helpful. So it's not until after Norris and Bittaker are arrested that the police show Robin a series of mugshots. Now, without hesitation, she points out both of them. Although she does pick them out, the manner of her rape and also one that she was let go and the interior of the van don't match. So all of that, they're never charged with her rape. Because it's just one of those, I don't know. The thing was weird. Yeah. They're not 100% sure that it was those two. Why she picked both of them out, that's weird. But I don't know if it's maybe a case of since Norris has wanted to let some of them go, maybe they were allowed to, or Bittaker caved on one. I don't know.
Or my question would be, by the time they arrested these two morons and she picked them out of the photos, had they been on the news, does she recognize them because of that?
True. But
also, was there any DNA? Like, did they do a rape kit on her or anything? Because I feel like, especially now, the late 70s, early 80s, they were getting their stuff together with DNA evidence, and they would definitely be able to make that shit stick now. Are they still alive?
I'm not telling you yet. So the last victim was on Halloween night. Her name's Lynette Ledford. She worked at McDonald's up on Foothill Boulevard. Now, her and her brother had dinner up there, and then he brought her home. Now, her plan was to go to a Halloween party, but she decided that she didn't really want to go in costume, so she decided just to wear her Levi's and a dark long-sleeve shirt. Now,
How old is she?
Fuck you, Andrea, I don't know.
That was unusually harsh.
You keep asking me questions that, like, I don't know. Under 18.
Okay.
But she was going to go to the party around 8 o'clock. She goes there. She's there for about 2 hours. She decides to go away from the party with some people from the party. They're two boys that she met there. So they go to the gas station. They ask Lynette for money, but she didn't have any money to give them. So they get into an argument, which causes her to get out of the car, and she decides, fuck this, I'm going to hitchhike home. And of course, who's out there? Norris and Bittaker. She gets in the van. Norris drives to a secluded area, parks, jumps in the back, draws his knife on her. Norris hops into the driver's seat. He could hear screams coming from the back of the van, obviously. Bittaker turns on his recorder. Bittaker would say it was her fault. She wouldn't scream, so he had to hit her, or she was too quiet. Now, every time she would lay there and be quiet, he would get mad at her, and he'd hit her or use the pliers on her to get her to make some sort of noise. This goes on for about an hour or two before he turns off the recorder, and now Norris wants to know why she isn't screaming the way she was when Bittaker was with her. So Norris grabs the sledgehammer and starts using it on Leah, hitting her in the elbow to make her scream.
Wait, I thought her name was Lynette, or but he called her Leah.
Right. He took the sledgehammer that he had used on Leah
to kill her.
And gotcha. Starts hitting her on the elbow to make her scream. So he continues to hit her as hard as he can. That way they're enjoying hearing the screaming. Bittaker points out to Norris that he's killed all the other girls, and it's time for Norris to start pulling his weight. He hasn't killed anybody yet, so this one's all his.
And I feel like the sledgehammer to the head on the other girl, on Leah, probably killed her before the strangling did.
I don't know. I hope for her sake. Now, Norris agrees. So he's just like, well, it seems like the coat hanger has worked. So he takes the coat hanger, the way Bittaker had used around Cindy's neck, and tightens it. Now, when Lynette's body's found, that coat hanger was tightened to the size of a silver dollar.
Holy shit. That's like the size of your windpipe.
You figure if they would have tightened it in any further than that, they probably would have just decapitated her.
Oh, that poor girl.
But Bittaker decides, you know what? Instead of chunking her off of a cliff, let's go dump her in somebody's front yard to see how everybody reacts to that. So they take Lynette's body, throw her out of the van into somebody's front yard where they've got ivy growing. Now, Lynette's body will have extensive bruising, tearing around her breasts, bruises on her genitals, and on her elbow. And then laboratory examination would show sperm in her mouth, vagina, and anus.
Poor girl.
Now, this is the only body that the police will have that's not skeletal remains. So that's part of the, this information just tells you how much she's gone through. Lord knows how much the other girls went through because, again, all they've got are bones. Oh, well, really, they've only got the other two girls and then two others that are never recovered. So I'm going to introduce another individual into this. A Mr. Joseph Jackson. Norris met Jackson while both of them were confined for rape convictions in the Atascadero State Mental Hospital. And they bonded over their statistic ideas. Did I say statistic?
You sure did.
So they bond over their sadistic ideas, much like Norris and Bittaker did. After Norris and Bittaker get out of prison, they get together with Jackson. The three men go around in the van, taking pictures of young teenage girls in crowded areas because they can go unnoticed, which I feel like that's the three men brains thinking that they're in a group of girls and no one's noticing.
Nobody's noticing three grown-ass older men with a group of teenage girls. Yeah, it's geniuses.
So that's what they're doing. Now, in early November, Norris confides to Jackson that Norris and Bittaker had actually murdered some young girls. Now, this scares the shit out of Jackson because he's like, dude, I thought it was just talk. And Jackson is just like, he's got a 13 and 17-year-old daughter, and he's worried for them and his own life. So Jackson goes to law enforcement for help, but they seem less than interested because at this point, there are no bodies. He has no names. So they're like, what are we supposed to do with this information? So
Well, didn't they have the last girl's body?
this is rewinding. This is before Lynette.
Uh,
This is in November.
okay. Wait, if it's in November, they killed the last girl in October.
Yeah. So it's in a different area. So he goes to the LAPD, but mind you, that it's not the only body I would imagine that is like they don't know Norris and Bittaker are attached to that body, and Jackson doesn't know that that girl was discovered. So when he goes to the police, he really doesn't know anything. He doesn't know where any of this has happened. He doesn't know that Norris, when he confides in him, that he's not just fucking with him, and the police are not interested since he doesn't have information.
Which, by the way, if this guy has 2 teenage daughters, why is he out taking pictures of other teenage girls? So it's okay to be a perv.
Yeah, and he has boundaries. He's
apparently like, so.
Looky, no touchy. So one LAPD detective that met with Jackson suggests that he notify the South Bay police, since that's where the supposed crimes had taken place, and they're going to know if bodies have turned up or anybody gone missing that fits that description of what Jackson knows, and maybe they'll have some sort of interest in pursuing that information.
Smart.
Sorta. But instead of going to the South Bay police, Jackson goes to Paul Bynum of the Hermosa Beach Police Department, who was the first person to actually take Jackson's information seriously. The first thing he did was he decided to place Norris under surveillance. And it didn't take long before Norris was observed loading baggies of marijuana into his Redondo Beach apartment. Because of this, they arrest him because he's on parole. And then this opens the door of being able to sniff around for if he's doing anything else.
Well, if he's on parole, aren't they allowed to go for any reason to investigate to make sure he's on his best behavior? Or at least with probation they are. I would assume parole's similar.
Yeah, it's the 70s.
True.
Now, when Bittaker learns of Norris's arrest, he decides now's a good time to dispose of some evidence in the van. Got to do some cleaning. This is when he buries the photographs and recordings in a cemetery. He also, during this time, he'd been mailing his old inmate friend, Richard Shootman, the pictures that are going to be used in evidence for their trial. What? That's where the pictures come from, because all the while when he's taking these Polaroids, he's sending them to his friend.
Is this the one that was writing the
story? And selling them to other inmates. Now, Bittaker will never say where he buries the evidence. He is arrested later that same day. But because of his hurry to try to get rid of the evidence, he doesn't get rid of everything. They do eventually impound the van, and an exhaustive search turns up numerous items of evidence, including like the tools. They do find the cassette tape that Bittaker overlooked that recorded Lynette's torture. Many people who listen to it will say it's the most awful thing that you could ever hear. And now, mind you, while Norris is in the custody of police, they only have Lynette Ledford's body. So they don't even know that they're even connected, but they don't know about the other girls. But at the time of Norris's confession, the police only had the body of Lynette Ledford, and even at that point, they don't know that there's a connection. They also have the notorious tape recording of Norris and Bittaker violently assaulting her, because Bittaker wanted to record the taping of the raping of a virgin. Now, this tape recording is described as being so graphic that some people had to leave the room altogether because they couldn't listen to it. And I get that somebody had to be able to know what was on it, but ugh.
That's horrible.
Now, Norris, partially out of guilt for what he had done, he decides to accept a plea deal and testify against Bittaker. It takes 3 hours to record his entire statement of what he and Norris had done. And in those 3 hours, he details all 5 murders. Now, Norris does plead guilty. He gets 45 years of life in prison with the option of parole, but that's because he agrees to testify, and that removes the death penalty. Now, as a result of this plea deal, Norris was also willing to lead law enforcement to where they disposed of the bodies. But even though Norris takes them to where he and Bittaker had thrown Cindy Schaefer, they still can't find her body. So they also go down and bring the Sierra Madre search and rescue team, and they're able to recover partial remains of Jackie and Leah. Then that's where the whole ice pick is still lodged in Jackie's head. It was only a few months after their death when they find their remains, and Leah they identified by her dental records. And then when they find the other skull with the ice pick in her ear canal, or where it would be, she's missing all of her teeth.
Holy shit.
I don't know how that would happen. I would assume that happened since there's only partial remains, but that's the only way they know that Jackie is Jackie, because the ice pick. There are torrential downpours on this part of the Glendora Mountain Road. So had they come out a week later, most likely they wouldn't have been able to recover either one of their bodies, because it would have been like buried in the mud, washed out. There wouldn't have been anything to find. Now, during Norris's confession, he would also claim that Bittaker was the mastermind behind everything: the kidnapping, the rape, the murder of the 5 girls. But Bittaker's attorney would claim that Norris was the one who had the issues, and he was the sexual deviant that got pleasure from terrorizing his victims, not Bittaker.
Mm-hmm. But Bittaker's the one taking the pictures and sending it to a friend, right?
Yeah. Now,
right.
The jury would listen to the recording of Lynette being tortured, and it really is the most devastating testimony the jury will hear. Because it's 11 minutes of the tape recording that plays. Many spectators in the courtroom end up running out in tears, and many others broke down hearing her agonizing screams and the hell she endured before her death.
Which, okay, not taking away from that at all, but I'm assuming that Bittaker made like some type of commenting or anything. It wasn't just her being tortured, right?
Correct. So there's a transcript of what's on the tape of like her, anything she says, like the no, stop, don't, any of those.
Mm-hmm.
And then like the audio that's with it.
Yeah, but so you know how Bittaker, you said his lawyer is trying to say that it was Norris that enjoyed the...
Yeah, but you can hear it's Bittaker.
Yeah.
Well, Bittaker would testify saying the recording was just, quote, pillow talk. He also said that in this effect, it was just foreplay.
Okay.
I don't know about you,
I don't know if it counts,
but nothing gets me hot like having my nipple ripped off with vice grips.
Yeah, and I don't know about you, but being raped and tortured, not necessarily pillow talk or foreplay. Like,
Again, with the amount of times Bittaker, like it'll be when he testifies, they describe it as if a mechanic discussed an oil change, of just how cavalier he is about it. He's not sorry in any way. Now, what's kind of funny later on is he'll claim that he was a psychopath, but he's not anymore. Now he's emotional. He's gotten in touch with his softer side, and he'll cry all the time. And it's just like, even listening to him say it in such a cavalier way, I feel like everybody's doing right. Sure, buddy. Okay. You just decided to turn over your psychopath leaf.
Yeah, no. And even if he did, he still committed the.
Yeah. So
Just because you can work out a few tears doesn't mean that you're innocent.
it shouldn't come as a surprise, but February 17th, 1981, the jury convicts Bittaker of murder on all 5 accounts. Now,
Good.
on the 24th, they unanimously vote to sentence him to the death penalty, and a month later, he's transferred to San Quentin Prison to be on death row. Now, when Bittaker's moved to death row, he resides in a 5 by 9 foot cell with no natural light, very limited contact with human beings. And each week, he's only allowed 3 showers, 2 1-hour-long exercise periods, and a 12 by 8 wire enclosed cage. Now, in order to get into those exercise play yards things, I don't know why I called it a play yard, but into his playpen, prisoners have to be strip searched and then shackled as a condition to go into those yards. Now, this makes it so the majority of prisoners will opt to remain in their cells. So, and also because of the hostility from other inmates, Bittaker never leaves his cell unless he has to shower. So he spends a great deal of time with books from the prison library, studying legal documents, and mostly watching a 13-inch screen television that he had purchased from a prison-approved vendor. Now, death row prisoners are not allowed to work and do not engage in any form of rehabilitation. They're allowed to spend up to $190 a month at like the prison commissary thing. But this money can only be provided by people outside the prison, which are typically friends or family. Now, Bittaker's parents died in the 80s, and he has no family or any visits. Those are even rare. There's no air conditioning, internet, conjugal visits, none of that. Although
I think his conjugal anything have been played up and exceeded. Yeah, like, no. If he wants any conjugal visits, he can go ahead and take himself to his playpen.
Now, Bittaker does legally get married early in his confinement, but his spouse files for divorce 4 years later. Now, as much as I tried, Andrea, I could not find the name of this lady's name or her, whoever she was. Of the fuck, how is that even a marriage?
She must have lost a bet.
How do you even? Hey, I don't even. I just can't.
No.
Now, when Bittaker arrives on death row, there's only 80 inmates. By 1989, though, it increases to 200, and by 1992, which is just 3 short years later, it's up to 345.
Holy shit.
Now, during this time, it's because the public is struggling with the judicial process and also the legality of the death penalty. And twice between 1972 and 1976, the Supreme Court would invalidate the state's death penalty and overturn the death sentences of 177 individuals, including Charles Manson and Sirhan.
What?
Yes. So
California was doing great, and then somebody got in office and went soft.
Yes. Now,
because that's fucked up.
The weird time is every time they decide the death penalty should not be a thing, it ends up coming back because the public overwhelmingly approve restoring the death penalty. But because of this waffling back and forth of whether we do or don't do this, it delays all of these people who are getting the death penalty sentence, or they just sit there stagnant while everybody figures out what the fuck they're going to do.
Yeah, that's stupid.
Now, also during this process, Bittaker is doing his appeals. He didn't make it to the Supreme Court in time to have his death penalty switched over, and his execution date was set for December 29th, 1989. Now, when Bittaker appeals his conviction to the U.S. Supreme Court, his execution is automatically stayed, and another execution date set for July 23rd, 1991, because that way it gives him time for his appeals. Now, during this process of all the delays and everything, the judge passes away in the middle of one of his appeals. Naturally, he's in his 70s, so don't think that there was a hit. So that makes his appeals have to restart from the beginning. So his execution gets delayed again until November 29th, 2000. Now, by this point, California's death row is at 2,500 prisoners.
So how can they keep sentencing people to
The
death
death.
if they're not doing the death penalty?
So part of it is the appeals process of how long that takes to run. That the ones who are sentenced to death are kind of turning into just life in prison. They're just sitting there stagnant, just eating up tax dollars. In 2009, Roy Norris receives his first mandatory parole hearing.
Mandatory?
Yeah, because he served enough of his sentence that he's up for parole.
But why does it have to be mandatory? Why can't they just be like...
I don't know, Andrew. I don't make the rules. But he actually opts not to attend it, so they automatically reject it because he doesn't even want to show up for his parole hearing. His next parole hearing is in 2019. You think they get out?
They?
Oh, well, Norris or Bittaker doesn't, so...
Okay, so yes, I think Norris eventually is going to get out because that's just the way our judicial system works.
No, unfortunately, Roy Norris dies in prison February 2020.
Woohoo!
Lawrence Bittaker will also die in prison long before his execution date is even close. He dies December 2019.
He was oldish, like...
Yes. Yes, they were. That's where I say this whole case is fucked. Like... But
I realize they get caught, but there's no justice.
No, there's really not. Because
there's a lot of waffling back and forth because California can't get their shit straight. No offense to California, but that's not right.
No, there was no justice in that. And the way I see it, Norris, as part of his plea agreement, was supposed to find those girls.
Yeah.
And then Bittaker will not help find the girls, but when he learns where Norris took them, he laughs and goes, he didn't even go the right place.
Well, he went to the right place-ish that they recovered too.
Well, they brought in the Sierra Madre search and rescue, so it's possible that they were close enough in whatever area. But that's where I also say that I do think Bittaker was absolutely the ringleader of this, and Norris was just his sidekick dipshit monkey.
Yeah.
I think Norris on his own is an idiot.
I think Norris on his own was a rapist, which doesn't make him a good guy at all. But I think he would have gone around raping women, but not killing them. Shit, leave it up to him. He would have been raping them and giving them his phone number.
And I really feel like he probably only killed Lynette out of fear of what Bittaker would do to him.
I could see that.
You've already seen him, how he treats people. Because when he had to get out of the van and walk away because he knew what was going to happen.
I also kind of question when Norris took off in the van and like what kind of repercussions were in that for Norris? Like seriously, you know what I mean? Did he kick his ass when they finally did meet back up? Like they had to have had a meeting place that they went back to, but
I feel like it was like some heavy breathing down at the end of a cul-de-sac when he like, give me the fucking keys.
And then at that point, when they finally catch the last girl or kidnap the last girl, and Bittaker's like, it's your turn to kill her. I don't feel like Norris felt like he had very many options. Not to be sympathetic to him at all, because I'm not, but I feel like maybe I could see him getting smacked upside the head for taking off and leaving him. Like, you fucking idiot. You were supposed to take off once I got in the van, not before.
You didn't see me run in behind it?
Oh my gosh. That was definitely
some fucked upness. So everybody enjoy their Halloween. Be safe. Yeah. Don't hitchhike. Be aware of people trying to poison you. They're most likely your friends or family.
And don't walk alone anywhere, or even in pairs. You're not safe. No. Even in pairs. The world is a fucked up place. We hope you enjoyed today's episode of Homicide Hobbies. If we made you laugh, if we made you cry, or if we mind-fucked you for the day, then we thank you for listening. Please write a review on whatever you're listening to us on. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your coworkers. We're freaking awesome. And join us next week for another episode of Homicide Hobbies. I'm Andy.
And I'm Claire.
That's all we've got.